Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome back to the third lecture of your history. The chapter is Sufism in the subcontinent. We completed half of the chapter before and now we will be continuing the rest of the chapter in this lesson. So let's have a look at what we've learned so far. We discussed about what is Sufism. Sufism is the Islamic belief and practice where Muslims seek to find the truth and love of God. Then we discussed how Sufism started, and it started in the Umayyad dynasty just after the death of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Then we discussed the evolution of Sufism, how the madrasas opened and how the different orders and paths appeared, and how the meditation and whirling dance appeared in the Sufism, but the main concept was the zikr of Allah Ta'ala. Then we discussed the ways of ancient Sufis. Well, how did the ancient Sufis practiced Sufism? They lived alone, they meditated, and they did repetition of Quranic verses. Then we learned about the early Sufism. What was the attire of the early Sufis? They wore a coarse woolen robe, which meant suf, and it meant wool. And how the Sufi of Libya, the king of Libya, actually, he reached great heights of power. But of course, wealth was not the important thing in a Sufi's life. So Sufis, they waged war, but only in self-defense or persecution. And so now let us continue this chapter. The next topic is the effects of Sufism in the subcontinent. Sufism has had a very powerful influence on the development of Islam, particularly in terms of missionary activity. Missionary means the dawa or the tabligh. Some Sufis settled in India where they established a link with the Hindu and Buddhist mystics whose beliefs and practices were in some ways similar to them. They made many thousands of converts to Islam through their personal goodness and their teachings of the love of God and men. But most importantly, they taught that all people are equal, and this made many Hindus who hated the strict caste system turn to Islam. So how did the Sufis contributed in the subcontinent? They actually went for the missionary activity to spread Islam. And they were active in war and politics when it was only necessary. They had great contribution to poetry and literature. The reform and revitalization of Islam started in Sufism, that is, the Islam spread far and wide. Just because of the way Sufi taught about Islam and inculcated the love of God. And also the Sufis sought truth and oneness with God through meditation, prayer, and other practices. All in all, the worldliness and wickedness of many people threatened Sufism, but it flourished far and wide. Now we'll have a look at what Sufism did throughout the world. The Sufis were very influential as Islam spread. They were active in North Africa, Spain, and later in Central Asia and in Africa, the south of the Sahara Desert, as well as in Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Later, between the 18th and 20th centuries, they were among the leaders of the struggle against European colonial powers like the British, French, Dutch, and Russians. Now let's have a look at the cultural influence the Sufis brought. The Sufis were not only important as missionaries or the religious performers, teachers, soldiers, or politicians, but their influence in literature was also enormous. They wrote stories, particularly mystical love poems, which have made Urdu, Persian, Turkish, and Sindhi far richer languages. They also added color to the lives of many people through celebrations for the anniversaries of saints and by encouraging people to visit temples and shrines. even if more orthodox Muslims did not agree with this. What is a temple or a shrine? It's basically a mazar. Sufism is still a vital force in Pakistan today. The shrine of Abdullah Shah Ghazi, that is in Karachi, is frequented by devotees and qawwalis are extremely popular. Can you guess what shrine is shown in this slide? It's a very famous shrine of a Sufi that is located in Lahore. It is in the Andrune Sheher Lahore. Can you guess which shrine is this? If you've guessed, write your answers on your notebooks.